They say everyone has a breaking point. 20 years working with electricity taught me that every circuit, no matter how well built, has a limit before it blows. And tonight, I could feel mine buzzing right on the edge. Because nothing says happy marriage quite like your wife inviting her ex-boyfriend over for dinner and expecting you to play the gracious host. I'm Kevin Parrish, 38 years old, co-owner of Parrish Electrical, father of 2 teenage daughters, and apparently the reigning fool of suburban Michigan. Kevin, you remember Kyle, don't you? Beth's voice was sweet, too sweet, like syrup hiding poison. I turned toward the man at my dining table. Tall, thin, the kind of confident smirk you only wear when you think you've already won. He was sitting in my chair, eating my food, drinking my wine, and looking at my wife like she was dessert. I smiled back, but inside, every wire in me was sparking. Stay with me till the end, because what happened after that dinner wasn't just about betrayal. It was about what happens when a man who's built his life on control finally decides to stop holding back. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to Dark Infidelity Stories, where every confession peels back the mask of perfect marriages and exposes the truth simmering underneath. Kyle Morrison, Beth's college ex. The same Kyle who'd stolen $2,000 from her parents' safe during Christmas break 15 years ago. The same Kyle who'd spent half his adult life in and out of rehab before somehow landing a job at Beth's marketing firm 6 months ago. Sure do, I said, forcing a polite smile that barely hid the current running under my skin. How's recovery going, Kyle? Beth's warning look hit me across the table like a jolt of static. My daughters, Bree 15 and Beau 13, fidgeted in their seats. They didn't say a word, but they didn't have to. Kids are good at sensing voltage in a room. Kyle flashed a smile so white it looked almost artificial. Great, actually. Been clean for 2 years. Beth's been amazing through it all. Haven't you, sweetheart? Sweetheart. In my house. At my table. Beth laughed lightly, her hand brushing his arm. Kyle's been doing wonders with the Henderson account. We've been putting in long hours together. Long hours. Right. I'd noticed those, the late nights, the emergency weekends, the mysterious business trips that never seemed to produce any results. Then came my brother, Jacob Parrish, walking in like he was fashionably late to his own movie premiere. 2 years older, 6 inches taller, and somehow still the family favorite despite having never actually worked for anything. Sorry I'm late, he said, kissing Beth's cheek a little too casually. Traffic was a nightmare. He turned to Kyle, shaking his hand like they were old friends, which was strange considering I'd never mentioned Kyle to him. So, Jacob said as he sat down, Beth tells me you two have been working closely together. Something in his voice made my jaw tighten. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. Like everyone at the table knew a punchline I didn't. Very closely, Kyle replied, grinning, and Beth actually giggled. Like a love-struck teenager instead of a 36-year-old mother of 2. Across the table, Bree's face flushed with second-hand embarrassment. Beau just stared at her plate, jaw clenched, eyes dark. I think we're making my husband jealous, Beth said suddenly, loud enough for everyone to hear. That was it. The spark that overloaded the circuit. Something inside me didn't break. It snapped, clean and sharp like a live wire under too much current. I stood up slowly. The entire table went silent, the air thick with the kind of tension you can feel in your teeth. Everyone waited for me to explode, to shout, to accuse, to make a scene. Instead I smiled. A calm, unnerving smile that made even Kyle shift in his seat. You know what? I said evenly. I think I'll let you all finish dinner without me. And with that I walked out, past the table, past the whispers and into the garage. My tools, my truck, and whatever remained of my dignity were waiting for me there. I sat in the driver's seat, staring into the dark, listening to the faint murmur of voices from inside, voices that probably called me paranoid, controlling, bitter. But I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about circuits, about overloads, about what happens when you keep pumping power into a system that's already fried, until one day it burns everything down. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they were about to learn that I'd been working with electricity for 20 years, and I knew exactly how to make things spark. Monday morning arrived wrapped in a cold gray drizzle, the kind that makes the whole world look like it hasn't been washed in weeks. I got to Parish Electrical before dawn, just like I had every day for 15 years. Our building sat in the industrial outskirts of town, surrounded by chain-link fences, brick warehouses, and the ghosts of 100 small businesses that no one noticed anymore. Carl Robertson was already inside, hunched over blueprints with a mug of coffee that looked strong enough to dissolve steel. "Morning, boss," he grunted without looking up. "You look like hell." "Feel worse," I said, grabbing a cup from the pot that had probably been brewing since the Clinton administration. "Carl, I need you to pull some files for me." He finally looked up. "What kind of files?" "The kind that show every job Beth's company has done for us this past year. Invoices, work orders, every time they've set foot in this building." Carl's brow furrowed. He didn't ask questions. 23 years in the Navy had trained him to know when not to. While he went digging, I headed for the security office. 2 years ago, we'd installed cameras after a string of break-ins. What nobody realized was that I'd set the system to archive everything. All footage, all logs, for 18 months. 3 hours later, I had my answers, and they made my coffee taste like battery acid. Beth's emergency inventory checks? Always on nights Jacob was supposedly out of town. Kyle's equipment inspections? Perfectly timed for when I was working jobs across the county. And the two of them, together, in my office, going through my computer, my files, my life. Then came the real shock. Jacob's travel records, hotel receipts, gas charges, dinner bills. Half of his so-called trips never happened. He wasn't out of town. He was right here, whining and dining near Beth's office. My wife, my brother, the two people I trusted most, working side by side to dismantle everything I'd built. I printed everything, timestamps, screenshots, receipts. Proof so solid it hummed in my hands. Then I made one phone call. "Connie," I said when she answered. "My sister, Connie Parrish Williams, the only member of this cursed family who'd never taken advantage of me. A lawyer sharp enough to cut glass." "Kevin," she said, instantly alert. "It's barely 9 in the morning. What's wrong?" "I need to see you today," I said quietly. "And Connie, bring everything you know about divorce law in Michigan." The silence on the line stretched long enough to make me wonder if she was still there. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed, steady, cold, professional. "I'll clear my schedule," she said. "Whatever happened, Kevin, we're going to fix it." And as I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: control. For 20 years, I'd built systems, connected wires, and repaired circuits. But now I was about to rewire my entire life. And this time, when the lights went out, it wouldn't be my house that burned. "How bad is it?" she finally asked. "Bad enough," I said, "that I'm about to find out who my real friends are." We met at a quiet diner on the far edge of town, the kind of place where the coffee hit like jet fuel, the pie was made from scratch, and the waitresses had seen enough heartbreak to stop asking questions. Connie showed up in full lawyer mode, sleek power suit, crisp white blouse, and a stare sharp enough to cut glass. She set her briefcase down, gave a small nod, and waited. I told her everything. The dinner party, the fake business trips, the security footage, and the long, ugly string of lies that stretched back months. Connie didn't interrupt once, just took notes in that razor-precise handwriting they must drill into you in law school. "You're absolutely sure about this?" she asked when I finished. "I'm sure," I said. "Because once we start, there's no going back. Beth's going to fight dirty. Jacob will try to edge me out of the business. And every friend we've ever shared will start choosing sides." I thought about that for a moment. The truth was, most of them were her friends or couple friends who'd rather not deal with the fallout of divided loyalties. "Let them," I said finally. "I'd rather stand alone in truth than surrounded by lies." Connie gave a small, knowing smile, then opened her briefcase. "Then let's burn it all down." The next 2 weeks felt like a high-stakes chess match played by grandmasters. Every move calculated, every counter-move anticipated. Connie filed the divorce papers on a Thursday morning, adultery and abandonment. By that afternoon, Beth's name flashed across my phone every 10 minutes, her voicemails growing shriller with every call. I didn't answer. I was too busy executing what Connie called financial containment. Joint credit cards canceled. Shared accounts frozen. The house, the one in my name thanks to my grandfather's inheritance, now sealed with new locks and a restraining order that kept Beth from stepping foot inside. Then came Jacob. He strolled into the office Friday morning like nothing had happened, holding coffee and a box of donuts as if sugar could erase betrayal. "Kevin, we need to talk," he said, settling into the chair opposite me, all calm and confidence. "I'm listening," I said flatly. "This thing with Beth, it's complicated. Adultery usually is." His face went red. "It's not what you think." "Really?" I leaned forward. "Because what I think is that my brother and my wife have been sleeping together for months, using my company as their private love nest. Tell me, Jacob, am I wrong?" Silence. The kind that hums in the air, heavy and electric. He couldn't even look at me. For a second, I almost pitied him. Almost. "I want to buy you out," he said finally. I blinked. "Excuse me?" "Your shares. I'll pay fair market value. You can take the money, start over somewhere new. Clean slate for everyone." I leaned back, studying his face, the golden boy who'd always gotten everything handed to him, now trying to take the last thing I had left. "What's fair market value, Jacob?" I had it appraised. 200,000. I laughed. A real, sharp laugh that echoed through the office. 200? "Jacob, we cleared 400,000 in profit last year. The building is worth more than that. The equipment, the client list, the contracts, you're offering me about 20 cents on the dollar." He didn't flinch. "It's a fair offer considering the circumstances." "What circumstances?" "The one where you've been screwing my wife." He shot to his feet so fast he nearly sent his coffee flying. "Enough," he shouted. "You want to play hardball? Fine. But don't forget, I know where all the bodies are buried in this company. I know about the corners we cut on the Morrison job, and the inspection reports we doctored for the hospital contract. You want to go to war with me, Kevin? You'll lose everything." I smiled. The same cold smile I'd worn the night of the dinner party. The smile that said I knew something he didn't. "Jacob," I said quietly, "you just made a very big mistake." The recording app on my phone had been running since the moment he walked in. Every word, every threat, every confession, captured in crystal clarity. "Get out of my office," I said evenly. "And next time you want to threaten me, check if I'm recording first." The look on his face? Worth every sleepless night I'd had since this all began. Jacob didn't handle the revelation well. I learned that around 2 a.m., when a brick came crashing through my living room window. The security cameras caught everything. His truck in the driveway, his face under the streetlight, the moment he picked up a brick from my own garden border and hurled it through the glass like some overgrown teenager. I called the police, filed the report, added vandalism to the growing list of charges that were about to make his life miserable. Then I called my insurance company, my lawyer, and the local news channel that loved a story about powerful men behaving badly. But Jacob wasn't done. He showed up at the office the next morning, flanked by 2 men who looked like they'd been sculpted out of prison concrete, not gym memberships. "We need to settle this," he barked, pushing past Mary at the front desk. "Everything all right, Mr. Grayson?" she asked nervously. "It's okay, Mary," I said. "Why don't you take an early lunch?" She grabbed her purse and bolted. Smart woman. "Nice friends," I said, glancing at the 2 muscle heads. "Networking event?" "Shut up, Kevin," he snapped. "You think you're so clever with your recordings and your lawyers, but you forgot one thing." "What's that?" "I still own 40% of this company, which means I have access to everything including the safe." "The safe, the fireproof vault where we kept contracts, drives, and emergency cash. You're going to open it," he said, stepping closer. "And you're going to hand over every recording, every document, every shred of evidence you think you have. Then you're going to sign the buyout papers I brought." I looked at the 2 goons beside him. They looked bored, like this was just another day on the clock. "And if I don't?" "Then my friends here will remind you why family loyalty matters." That's when Carl walked in from the warehouse, clipboard in hand, face calm but eyes sharp. "Morning, boss," he said to me. Then, turning to Jacob, "Didn't realize we had a meeting." "Private family business," Jacob said quickly. "Why don't you find something else to do?" Carl looked at me. 23 years of military service staring back. "Actually, Carl," I said, "I think you should stay." Jacob was just leaving. Jacob's face darkened. "No, I'm not." He didn't finish. Carl moved faster than a man his age should have been able to, stepping between us, calm and solid as a wall. The two hired thugs suddenly found the floor very interesting. "Gentlemen," Carl said evenly, "there seems to be some kind of misunderstanding. This is private property, and you weren't invited. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The words came out low, steady, calm enough to sound polite, sharp enough to leave no doubt. The bigger of Jacob's two goons started to speak, but Carl lifted a single hand, just a small gesture that carried the weight of a lifetime of authority. "Before you make a decision you'll regret," Carl said evenly, "you should probably know I already called the police. They're about 3 minutes out. You can walk out of here as free men, or you can stay and explain to the officers why you're standing on private property, threatening the owner, and trying to commit extortion." Jacob's expression flickered, red, then pale, then something unreadable. The air in the room thickened. "This isn't over, Kevin," he hissed. "Yeah," I said quietly, "it is. It ended the moment you decided loyalty was optional. You just haven't realized it yet." They left. The sound of the door slamming echoed through the office. Carl and I stood in the aftermath, two men surrounded by silence and the faint, distant wail of approaching sirens. "Thanks," I said finally. "Don't mention it, boss," Carl replied, scanning the doorway like a soldier still on alert. "But you might want to think about upgrading your security, maybe some outdoor cameras for the house too." "Already in progress," I said. "Good," he nodded. "Because something tells me your brother isn't the kind to quit quietly." He was right. But neither was I. The board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. Parish Electrical had 3 shareholders. Jacob and I held 40% each, and our mother, Ruth, controlled the remaining 20. It was supposed to keep us balanced, a family-run business guided by trust. But trust was dead, and Thursday's meeting would prove who still had a pulse. That entire week, I prepared like a general before a war. Not just gathering evidence, that part had been done for weeks, but preparing strategy. Connie, my lawyer, dug through the corporate bylaws that Jacob had probably never bothered to read. Buried deep in the fine print was the key, a clause that allowed for the removal of a board member engaged in activities harmful to the company's integrity or financial standing. That was the sword I planned to use. Ruth arrived 20 minutes early. She wore a black dress she usually reserved for funerals. Fitting, I thought, since this meeting would bury whatever was left of the family. At 73, she was still razor-sharp, eyes that saw through excuses, a tone that could cut through steel. "Kevin," she said, settling into her chair, "I hope you know what you're doing." "I do," I said quietly. "This is going to destroy the family." "The family destroyed itself, Mom. I'm just here to clean up the mess." Jacob arrived right on time as always, punctual, polished, pretending control. A slick lawyer trailed behind him, a thin man in a suit that probably cost more than my car, the kind who made problems vanish for a living. "Mother," Jacob said smoothly, kissing Ruth's cheek before turning to me. "Kevin." His nod was cold, formal, like I was just another business rival. "Let's begin," Ruth said, folding her hands. "Jacob, you called this meeting." "That's right," his lawyer said, snapping open his briefcase and pulling out a thick stack of papers. "We're here to revisit the buyout offer my client extended to Mr. Parrish, an offer that was rejected without fair consideration." "I considered it," I said. Then I laughed. It was insulting. "The offer reflects fair market value," the lawyer replied smoothly. "However, my client is willing to increase it by 10% as a gesture of goodwill." "How generous," I said with a dry smile. $220,000 for a company worth over $1 million. Ruth's eyebrows lifted. "Is that true, Jacob? You're offering your brother 20 cents on the dollar?" "The circumstances," Jacob began. What circumstances? Ruth's voice could have shattered glass. Jacob hesitated, exchanging a nervous glance with his lawyer. There have been personal issues that make it difficult for Kevin and me to continue working together. Personal issues? Ruth repeated slowly. You mean the fact that you've been sleeping with his wife? The silence that followed was absolute. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to hold its breath. Jacob's face went from pale to crimson. I don't know where you heard. I heard it from the security footage, Ruth said coldly. Kevin showed me everything. Every late-night visit. Every fake trip. Every lie you thought you'd buried. Jacob's glare burned into me. You poisoned her against me. I didn't poison anyone, I said. I just showed her the truth. Ruth rose from her chair, slow and deliberate, placing her hands on the table. Her voice was firm, steady, the voice of the woman who'd built this company from the ground up. Jonathan Parrish, she said, as the majority shareholder, I'm calling for a vote of no confidence. You have violated your fiduciary duty, damaged the reputation of this company, and betrayed the trust of your business partner. I move to remove you from the board effective immediately. You can't do this. Jacob's lawyer snapped. My client has rights. Your client, I said, pulling out my phone, has the right to remain silent. I hit play. Jacob's voice filled the room. Every threat, every illegal admission, every reckless confession from that day in my office. The lawyer's face drained of color. By the time the audio stopped, he was already shoving papers back into his briefcase. I'll need to consult privately with my client, he muttered. Take your time, Ruth said. The vote's tomorrow morning at 9, with or without you. When they left, the conference room fell quiet again. The only sound was the soft hum of the vents and the faint city traffic outside. Ruth exhaled slowly, then looked at me. Your father would be proud, she said. Would he? I asked. You could have handled this quietly, paid them off, walked away, started over. Instead, I chose to fight. That takes courage, she said. It doesn't feel like courage, I admitted. It feels like survival. Ruth smiled, that small, knowing smile of a woman who'd seen too much and endured it all. Sometimes, she said, they're the same thing. The next morning, the vote was unanimous. Jacob was officially removed from Parrish Electrical, his 40% redistributed between Ruth and me according to company bylaws. I now controlled 60%. Ruth held 40 until the day she chose to retire. Jacob's response was predictable: rage, denial, threats. He hired another lawyer, filed for injunctions, swore he'd sue everyone from me to the mailman. But the evidence buried him. Beth's reaction, though, that was a new level of crazy. She decided to go after my daughters. I found out from Bree, who called me from school, her voice shaking. Dad, Mom's here. She says she's taking us to live with her and Uncle Jacob. She has papers. I was in my truck before she finished the sentence, driving like a man possessed. The papers turned out to be forgeries. Connie confirmed that in one quick call to the courthouse. But that didn't stop Beth from causing a full-blown scene. By the time I arrived, she was in the principal's office, shouting at the staff, waving the fake documents like a flag of insanity. Beth, I said quietly from the doorway. She spun around, hair disheveled, eyes wild. Kevin, tell them they have to let me take my girls. Our girls, I corrected. And no, I won't. I'm their mother, she shouted. You're also the woman who abandoned them to shack up with my brother. The woman who picked her affair over her family. And right now, you're the woman trying to kidnap them with forged legal documents. The principal, Mrs. Henderson, a woman who looked like she dealt with 30 years' worth of difficult parents, stepped between us. Mr. Parrish, she said firmly, we've called the police. They'll be here shortly. Good, I said. Beth, you need to leave. Now. I'm not going anywhere without my daughters. Yeah, I said, you are. The police arrived 10 minutes later. 2 officers reviewed the fake papers, took statements, and promptly arrested Beth for attempted kidnapping and forgery. As they led her away in handcuffs, her voice echoed down the hall, threats, apologies, and delusions all tangled into one. Bree and Bo watched from the principal's office window, pale and silent. "Is Mom going to jail?" Bo asked softly. "For tonight, probably," I said. "After that, it's up to the judge." Bree looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. "Good," she said. I hoped she'd stay right where she was. That night, the three of us sat in the living room, pretending life was back to normal. Pizza boxes on the coffee table, the hum of the TV in the background, and a quiet tension hanging in the air like static. The girls worked on their homework while I caught up on emails and returned calls from clients curious about the sudden shake-up at the company. Around 9 o'clock, a firm knock echoed from the front door. When I checked the peephole, my stomach tightened. Standing outside were two familiar faces I hadn't expected to see that night, Tom and Jennifer Martinez. For 5 years they'd been our closest couple friends, the ones we'd gone on trips with, shared dinners with, laughed with. "Kevin," Jennifer said softly when I opened the door. "We heard about what happened at the school. We just wanted to make sure you and the girls were okay." I nodded, stepped aside, and offered them coffee. They accepted, but I could feel the weight of something unsaid sitting between us. The real reason for their visit didn't take long to surface. "Actually," Tom began carefully, glancing at Jennifer, "we wanted to talk to you about everything that's been going on with Beth and Jacob and the divorce." I sat down, already knowing where this was headed. Jennifer twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd seen before whenever she was about to say something uncomfortable. "Kevin," she said quietly, "we've been friends with both of you for a long time, and this whole thing is just really awkward for everyone." "I'm sure it is," I said evenly. Tom shifted in his seat. "Beth called us. She's really upset. Says you've been vindictive, trying to turn everyone against her." I put my coffee down, studying their faces. Tom looked uneasy. Jennifer looked guilty. The verdict was already written across their expressions. They'd picked their side. "What exactly did she tell you?" I asked. "That you planted evidence to make it look like she was cheating," Jennifer said hesitantly. "That you're using your money and connections to ruin her reputation. That you're keeping her from seeing her own daughters." "And you believe her?" They exchanged a glance. "We don't know what to believe," Jennifer said softly. "But Beth's our friend too, and she's in a bad place right now. She doesn't need comfort," I said coldly. "She needs consequences. There's a difference." Tom leaned forward, his voice careful. "Look, Kevin, we're not taking sides. We just think maybe you could ease up a little. Let her see the girls. Work something out without courts and lawyers." "Tom," I said, "did Beth happen to mention the footage I have of her and Jacob together in my office? Or the fake custody papers she used to try to kidnap my daughters? Or the part where she chose an affair with my brother over her family?" Silence. "I didn't think so." I stood up slowly. "Here's the thing about not taking sides. When someone's clearly wrong, staying neutral isn't noble. It's just cowardice dressed up as decency." Jennifer's face flushed. "That's not fair." "Fair?" I snapped. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been my wife talking to me instead of sneaking around behind my back. Fair would have been my so-called friends asking for my side before showing up here to tell me how to feel. Fair would have been someone, anyone, thinking about what all this has done to my girls." Tom rose to his feet too. "We're just trying to help." "No," I said quietly, "you're trying to make yourselves feel better for choosing the wrong side." They didn't argue. They just left, faces tight, silence heavy. Through the window, I watched them sit in their car for several long minutes, probably deciding how to spin it. Maybe they'd say the divorce had changed me, that grief had hardened me. Or maybe they'd just tell themselves they tried. An hour later, my phone started lighting up. Texts, calls, friends, acquaintances, all parroting the same advice. "Maybe you should consider mediation. Maybe you're being too harsh. Maybe Beth deserves another chance." By midnight, I'd heard it from 8 different people, all of them thinking they knew better than I did how to live my life. I shut my phone off. Enough noise. Upstairs, the house was finally quiet. The girls were asleep, exhausted from the chaos of the day. Bree was curled up with an open book still resting beside her, and Bo had passed out in her track uniform, too tired to even change. These two were what mattered. Not the fair-weather friends, not the brother who'd stabbed me in the back, not the wife who'd abandoned us all for her own mistakes. Just my daughters, two young girls who needed their father to be strong enough to protect them from the wreckage. I tucked them in, turned off the lights, and went back downstairs to plan the final stage of this war I never asked for, but intended to win. 3 months later, the divorce was final. Beth walked away with nothing. No alimony, no property, and only supervised visitation every other weekend. The prenup she'd signed 12 years earlier was airtight, and her affair had voided what little protection it offered. John's downfall came just as swiftly. His new lawyer uncovered the mess he'd made. Fake business trips funded with company money, equipment purchases funneled into shell companies he controlled. When the forensic accountants finished their audit, the total came to over $100,000 in embezzled funds. I could have had him arrested. Instead, I gave him a choice: repay the money and disappear, or face federal charges for wire fraud and embezzlement. He took the coward's way out, sold his house, and fled to Arizona. Beth lasted 2 weeks after John left town. With her reputation destroyed and her finances gone, she moved back to Ohio, to her parents' house. At 36, she was sleeping in her childhood bedroom and working as a dental receptionist. As for the friends who'd taken her side, they eventually learned what loyalty really cost. Supporting someone means staying when the truth gets uncomfortable, and that was a job none of them could handle. One by one, they drifted away from her. A few tried to crawl back into my life later. But by then, I'd learned a hard lesson. Real friends don't vanish when things get messy. Carl stepped up instead. He bought Jacob's shares at their true value, and together we rebuilt Parish Electrical from the ashes. For the first time in years, my life was quiet. No lies, no betrayal, no noise. Just the hum of hard work, the laughter of my daughters, and the peace that comes when you finally stop chasing fairness and start living for the truth. Together, we had turned Parish Electrical into something remarkable. A 30% growth in just a year, 3 major contracts landed, and a reputation stronger than ever. The shadow of my brother's scandal had faded, replaced by quiet pride and a sense of purpose. The girls were thriving too. Bree had made the honor roll and joined the debate team. Watching her speak was like watching a young lawyer in the making, sharp, calm, and precise, with a deeper understanding of people than most adults ever gained. Bo, on the other hand, had found her stride, literally. She shattered 2 school track records and was now catching the eye of colleges that wouldn't have given her a second glance before. It was a Thursday evening in late autumn, the kind of night where the world seemed to move slower, quieter. I was in my office finishing paperwork when Mary, my assistant, knocked softly. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "Says it's personal." When I stepped into the lobby, I froze. Standing there was Kyle Morrison. But not the same man I'd known. Gone were the expensive suits, the perfect hair, the practiced confidence. The man in front of me looked older, worn down, humbled. His once bright smile had vanished, replaced by a nervous, uncertain look. "Jamie," he said carefully, "thanks for seeing me." "I haven't decided to see you yet," I replied coolly. "What do you want?" He swallowed hard. "To apologize. And to tell you the truth about what really happened." For a moment, I just studied him, the tremor in his hands, the exhaustion in his eyes. Then I gestured toward my office. "You've got 5 minutes." He took a seat in the same chair John had sat in the last time we spoke. But where my brother had been smug, aggressive, and full of venom, Kyle just looked empty. "It wasn't Beth's idea," he said finally. "The affair, it was Jacob's." My pulse slowed. "Explain." Kyle exhaled, voice shaking. "He came to me about 6 months before that dinner. Said he knew about my history with Beth and that I was broke. He offered me $10,000 to seduce her, to get her to leave you." Something cold crept into my chest. "Why?" "He wanted control of the company," Kyle said. "He figured that if you were out of the picture, your mom would sell him her shares rather than run the business alone. That would make him sole owner." "And you agreed to it?" Kyle nodded, shame flooding his face. "I was desperate, Jamie. 3 months behind on rent, car about to get repossessed. 10 grand sounded like salvation. But it didn't go the way he planned, did it?" Kyle gave a bitter laugh. No, Beth, she fell for it completely. Started talking about leaving you, about a future with me. Jacob hadn't expected that. He just wanted to create a scandal, not a relationship. So what went wrong? He finally looked me in the eye. I did. I started feeling guilty, about you, about your daughters. I told Jacob I wanted out, that I wanted to come clean. That's when he told me the truth, that he'd been sleeping with Beth too. The air in the room grew heavier. Outside, the city was winding down, faint traffic sounds, a dog barking in the distance. But inside, it felt utterly still. He was playing both of us, Kyle said. Using me to pull Beth away from you, using her to get inside your business, your finances, your plans. When I threatened to tell you everything, he reminded me about my parole. Said one phone call and I'd be back in prison before I could explain. Why now? I asked quietly. He hesitated. Because Jacob's gone. Beth's gone. And I'm tired, Jamie. Tired of carrying their lies. He swallowed hard. And because you deserve better than what we did to you. All of us.